Okay, welcome to today's book of the day, Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Coleman. The number one correlator between success in any field, athletics, business, entrepreneurship, relationships, hinges on emotional intelligence. Now, this is a really interesting, really impactful book of the day because virtually no schools teach emotional intelligence, and the very few that do are private. The very few that do are leaps and bounds ahead of the traditional school system. Well, we're going to dive into this and how you can most effectively use emotional intelligence yourself. Whether you want to go out and read the book, highly recommend, or you just want to simply use this review as a resource. That's what I'm planning to do for you, okay? Give you the bits and pieces that are most effective from the book review so that you can go and implement and you can go and use yourself. So a lot of athletes watching this understand that at the highest level of performance, at the highest level of competition, virtually every single player, competitor, athlete has put in their 10,000 hours, right? The 10,000 hour Malcolm Gladwell. Sometimes that's taken out of context where you just need to put time in, you just need to put reps in. Or even at the level that you're playing at, whether you're, in high school, whether you're in college, whether you're playing professionally, everyone's put a significant amount of time in it. Just because you put in a lot of time doesn't mean that you're going to be the best player. And just because you put in more time than someone else doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be a better player than them. A big factor in that is emotional intelligence. So what is emotional intelligence? I got my notes here. So they start out the book with a quote from Aristotle, philosophy guy. Okay. Anyone can be angry. That is easy. But to be angry with the right person, to the right degree, at the right time, for the right purpose, and in the right way, that is not easy. So emotional intelligence is not about being emotionless. Emotional intelligence is not about having no emotion. It's about using it in the most productive, the most effective way. So how can you do that? How can you go about that? I'll give you a personal example of mine on how not to use it. So my senior season, I was a baseball player, college baseball player, played at a small little Division I school. I was in the top 5 or 10 in the nation in home runs. And we were going into our first conference weekend of this season. Okay. So, I had a great first about 20-30% of our season, just absolutely killing it. Just, that sense of just being in rhythm and flow and everything's coming and going exactly how you planned for it. Going into our first conference weekend of the season, I ran into a roadblock. We faced a team with pretty good pitching, some guys that went on to play professionally. But here's what happened, and it's like a nightmare, is that as a hitter, as a baseball player, I was walking to the plate, stepping in the batter's box, and then literally the next thing I remember, I was walking back to the dugout. It's like I completely blacked out. It's like I completely forgot what just happened. The reason was I was so frustrated, I was so anxious, I was so determined to get to something, to get to a position I wasn't even at yet. I was so anxious, and anxiousness is an emotion. It lives in the future instead of being present, instead of being right now. I didn't have the control. So I didn't have the emotional intelligence to make the adjustment. So what happened? It didn't just happen one at bat, it didn't just happen two at bats. It happened again and again and again. And it snowballed for a large chunk of the season. Unable to manage the emotions of anxiousness, of future pacing. Or maybe you're in a different boat where you think about things from the past, right? You think about guilt and shame of something that you messed up, and you're worried about, how your teammates, how your coaches, how your parents, how your friends are thinking about or judging you for that situation. So emotions live in two places. They live in the future and they live in the past. Okay. Obviously, you can have emotions in the present. You experience them in the present, but the negative emotions, anxiety, stress, live in the future. Guilt, shame, live in the past. And what they talk about in the book, emotional intelligence, is that impulse is the destructor. So What typically happens is you see something, you physically do something, or you hear something, and all of a sudden it leads to a response. Okay, so let's talk about the field of athletics. Okay, you see yourself mess up something that leads to an emotional response. You hear one of your teammates, or you hear something specific in your sport, and it leads to an emotional response, sometimes positively, sometimes negatively. Positive emotion, you talk about Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant loved the sound of a ball going through the net. To him, that was like euphoric. That was like a great association to a positive emotion. Some people have the emotion of their coach's voice. They hear their coach's voice and they have a response to that. It's not that their coach causes them to have that emotion. It's their relationship with what their coach is saying. It's the relationship of their coach's voice that causes them to have that relationship. So it's not your coach's problem, it's your problem. That's one of the biggest things for developing emotional intelligence, is taking responsibility. Now, your coach may be saying something negative. He might be, saying something demoralizing or trying to tear you down. But if you truly want to develop emotional intelligence, then it's about saying, I'm in control of how I respond to this situation. I may not like what my coach is saying. He may be a jackass. He may be a pain in the ass. But he's not responsible for the way I feel. You're responsible for the way you feel. That's one of the biggest factors of emotional intelligence. So there's 5 key components of emotional intelligence. I like to break it down into 4, but I'll give you the 5 that are in the book. So number 1, knowing your own emotions. How many times do we go throughout a game as an athlete, or a day, or a relationship, and we don't even realize that we're stressed, or we're frustrated, or pissed off for hours, or maybe even days or weeks later. So number 1 part of emotional intelligence is knowing your own emotion. You probably heard of a meditation or mindfulness. It's a great practice to bring you back to the present and to make you aware of those emotions and make you aware of what's actually going on, what's actually happening. So the first part of emotional intelligence is knowing your own emotions. The second part of it is being able to influence, being able to change your emotions. So number 1, your coach makes you pissed off, right? That's just a response that you've been conditioned to have, okay? Being able to influence and say, okay, I'm responsible. I can change my emotions. And you do that in a couple of ways. You change the pictures in your head. So you change what you're seeing in your mind, right? Are you seeing something happen negatively, or are you seeing something happen positively? It's not about positive thinking. It's about doing things strategically. So changing the pictures in your head, changing the words in your mind, right? So what are the words that you're saying to yourself? Are you saying, man, I hope I don't mess this up? Or you're saying, man, this is a great opportunity. You could say those 2 things for the same scenario, and it has a different impact on you. And the third part of it is obviously changing your body, changing the way you feel. I can't be sitting here slumped over and expect to be in a confident emotion. I've got to put myself in a confident physiology. I've got to control my breath. You guys have probably heard of breath work. You guys have probably heard of all sorts of different things with your physiology. Just simply putting yourself. There was a Harvard psychologist or a Harvard professor, I believe they were psychologists, that did a study on power posing. It was just simply putting yourself in confident positions, putting yourself in dominant positions, increased your testosterone and lowered your cortisol, just by simply for 120 seconds or longer. So 2 minutes or longer, just by putting yourself in a confident position. So if you're walking around in a defeated posture, if you're an athlete and you're in your sport and you're constantly in a negative state or negative physiology, then it's going to literally affect you on a hormonal level. Cortisol is the stress hormone. Cortisol is, it's actually, physically, it's been linked to causing more fat, storing more fat on your body, always on edge, just like that fight or flight. Testosterone, on the other hand, is more causal to building muscle, feeling more confident. It's like the confidence hormone. So there's literally chemical changes within your body by mastering this thing. So let's take it back. So number 1, the components of emotional intelligence: knowing your own emotions, awareness, right? If you meditate or whatever you do, mindfulness, knowing your own emotions. Number two, being able to influence your own emotions. You can do that by changing your pictures, what you say to yourself, and changing your physiology. The third part, which is in the book, is being able to motivate yourself. Now, that's something that we can talk about for days on end. I mean, there's people out there that say motivation doesn't last, or motivation doesn't matter, or there's no such thing as motivation. Well, the basis of everything you do is motivation, right? Whether you get up out of bed in the morning, you're motivated to some degree or not, right? Maybe you're not motivated to go to school, but you're motivated in a sense that you know that you have to get up because your parents are going to get pissed off, or you're not going to graduate school. There's motivation behind everything, but it's a hotly debated topic, and a lot of people really don't understand it for what it truly is. And part of that's, trying to gain attention and trying to get attention of others, saying, oh, there's no such thing as motivation. That captures people's attention, saying, oh, what do you mean? Tell me more. But in the essence of emotional intelligence, that's the third factor of emotional intelligence. The fourth factor is recognizing emotions in others. It's easy to recognize drastic changes in emotions. It's easy to recognize, when someone's really pissed off or really angry. That's easy. But it's more so the subtle fluctuations in emotions. They say 90% of what you communicate is not with the words that you're saying. So 90% of what you communicate is with your postures, with your facial expressions, with the tone of your voice, right? But the key to that is knowing what their baseline is. So what do I mean by their baseline? Their baseline is where they're at normally. So you can't just meet someone for the first time and say, oh yeah, you're pissed off. Maybe they are pissed off. Maybe there's telltale signs of when people are in a certain emotion, but you have to know their baseline to know their fluctuations. Are they excited or are they frustrated? And knowing where to go from there. And then the fifth part of it is knowing how to influence their emotions. So what typically happens with teammates, what typically happens in sports is that, we see an athlete or teammate that's pissed off, frustrated, and we say, just calm down, just relax. And sometimes that's like the worst thing that you can say to them. Sometimes you have to meet them where they're at. Sometimes if they're frustrated, for example, you have to be frustrated with them. Say, man, I know why you're frustrated. I get it. And then you have to lead them away from the frustration. You have to take them away from the frustration. But if they're pissed off, if their level of frustration is here, and you're here, and you say, oh man, just relax. That's a big jump. That's a huge jump to make. You have to meet them where they're at, and then lead them back up to here. Instead of having them make that huge jump, you progressively move with them. That's being able to influence their emotions. So the number one key to it all is awareness. The number one key is knowing your own, because if you don't identify your own emotions, then you can't change your emotions. If you're not aware of others' emotions, then you can't change others' emotions intentionally. You might do it on accident, and you probably do it often, but you can't do it intentionally. A couple other things here. I know a lot of you guys are interested in flow. So this is emotional intelligence has an area related to flow. So flow is that seamless state, that beautiful state where everything just seems to move perfectly and you just execute everything that you've practiced perfectly. With flow though, flow is finding the balance between boredom and finding the balance between anxiety. So anxiety and emotional intelligence would be overwhelmed, thinking about too many things. Boredom is not thinking about enough. So your brain can process a certain amount of information, right? Emotions, thoughts at the same time. The key is to find that sweet spot where you're not doing too little, you're not challenging yourself enough, or the other side of the spectrum where you're challenging yourself too much and you're overwhelmed. So emotional intelligence, finding flow is part of that. Flow is within emotional intelligence. There is an emotional intelligence component of flow, and it's right between anxiety, too much anxiety, and too much boredom. So, there's no way to judge emotional intelligence. That's why it's so difficult. There's no way to quantify it. There's no way to say, hey, you've got an emotional intelligence of 75 or 95 or 110, whatever it is. what the school system preys on and what they love is those test scores, those standardized tests, those tests that you got to cram for, those tests that they come in and they do testing a couple times a year to make sure that you're going to graduate, or your SAT to make sure you can get in college, or your placement exams for your master's program. But how much of it is actually practical? Now, I get there's some arguments for, well, you got to be able to critically problem solve, and you got to be able to figure things out, and you got to test the material that you've learned for so many years. But in the real world, you actually have to deal with what's called an emotion. Emotions are typically the driver of the decisions that we make. Think about it. If you're in a really positive, confident mood, you think you're going to make better decisions than if you're pissed off, frustrated, and angry? Absolutely. Absolutely. There's no debate against it. I don't care who you are, where you've been to school, what you're going to say. There's no debate against it. Emotional intelligence outweighs IQ any day of the week. So extremely beneficial. I hope you guys found this useful. Those are the key points from the book. Just a quick recap. Emotional intelligence, 5 components broken down in the book. There's nothing correlated to success more so than emotional intelligence. It's not IQ. It's not any standardized test. It's nothing like that. It's emotional intelligence. The 5 factors, quick recap. Know your own emotions. So awareness of your own emotions. Number 2, be able to change your emotions, and you change them through the images in your mind, what you're hearing, and what you're saying to yourself, or what you're doing with your body, your physiology. The third part of it is being able to motivate yourself. Okay? What do you want and what do you not want? And that's for all aspects of life. The fourth component of it is being aware of others' emotions. So where are they at typically? What's their baseline? And then where do you want to lead them to, which is the fifth part of it, is being able to influence others' emotions. So great read. Check it out. That's a quick recap of everything that's in it. Appreciate you guys. If you enjoy the video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't, subscribe to the channel. And if you're on the book of the day, I'm going to definitely add this to the downloadable guide with all of the other books on there. So appreciate you guys. We'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, thanks for watching. I just want to let you know we're always uploading some new free resources on our website. So check them out in the description below. Find out which one is the best for you. And I hope to see you soon.